And I see you are in here. Looks like two people.
Yeah, sorry, just started on the wrong browser at first.
I got you. So, Ptolus is a different world. This is a fully different setting from what we've played in the past, which was always inside of Faerun. Not sure how far you've ever got into the lore. Not sure how far you ever care about the lore. It's not that important. Part of what we'll do here is almost kind of walking you through character creation in a little bit different way. Um, Part of what this idea is this city is pretty much everything you could ever want, all self-contained in one place. So as a kind of general setting of what this is one of the largest cities in an empire. It is currently not the seat of the empire, though the emperor currently lives here, effectively in exile, because they're not nearly as safe in the other actual capital. While the empire is human and almost exclusively so, there are a lot of other races that exist in this world, including pretty traditional things like goblins, orcs, um, beastmen kind of thing. There's a lot of still all of those kind of fantasy races inside of this world. One of the biggest things in the Empire is that they have the actual religion that is the religion of the Empire. Very traditional kind of sun worshipping, uh, kind of benevolent sort of god, which was effectively actually somebody who was just a really, really good person who rose to um, a deity position. Trying to think what it's called when you deify
Ascend?
somebody.
Yeah, that's gonna bug me. What's the word?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of Caesar and Augustus, and it just doesn't come to mind right away.
Apotheosis?
That sounds right. Yep, like the changing of your body into the body of a god, essentially. Um, so that's kind of like the background of the religion. The actual empire has this religion that everybody essentially is basically told, like, this is your choice or die.
Oh well, alright. That seems clear enough.
So that religion is Lothianism. The god is Lothian, Lothian. Part of what makes Ptolus so amazing is that this was the city that is far enough away from the empire and independently large enough that this city is filled with many, many religions, many, many temples. There's probably two temples of Lothian for each other temple in this city, but it is one of those things to keep in mind that while the empire explicitly bans other religions, this is the one place where it's never quite been enforced, and still to this day is not necessarily enforced. While technically the Lothians still ban other religions and still kind of like reserve this kind of like vile genocidal thought that they can kill you off for being of another religion. I think it's been probably about 100 or so years most generations are beyond remembering when those like holy wars kind of took place. So that's kind of like the twist of like the religious understanding of where somebody who would be in the city kind of falls. Um, the city itself is on the coast. I'll bring up another picture real quick. All right. So this is the full kind of picture of the empire here. The city of Ptolus is kind of towards the western end of the empire. The city of Tarsus is the actual seat of the empire. Um, Ptolus is inside of that bay, which is named after it, the Bay of Ptolus, on the kind of northern coast of this continent. That is effectively the continent of this world. Iraq, which is like the southern continent, is very much kind of like Antarctica. It is the southern uh, hemisphere of this world, but most of the actual land um, in this world is a part of the actual empire and that main continent. Most of the landmass is all connected in that same um, singular position. So Ptolus again sits on the kind of western side of this bay. So there's always kind of the smells of the sea. When you're closer towards the actual eastern side of the city, you can usually hear some level of like the lapping of water. There's definitely plenty of noise in this city where other things will eventually kind of take over any of those sounds and kind of like ambiance. But the sea is definitely a big part of what this place is. The actual coast, there's approximately like I think it's about a 200 or so foot cliff down to the actual waters. So where you see the dock section here in the east side of the city, there's a very steep switchback climb that I think in about 4 switchbacks takes you from about 200 feet above sea level down to the docks, which is at sea level. And that's just kind of one of the separations of the city that are among the most natural separations into the different zones. You will find that the necropolis is where they bury all of their dead. That is sealed off and almost continually under siege because effectively nobody stays in there at night because of the dangers of the dead. Inside of the necropolis, there are known basically demons and devils that reside inside of one of the largest like chapels in the necropolis. And there's a very weird tension in this place where they're pretty sure the devils and demons can overwhelm the city at any given time, but the guards are kind of always on guard, making sure people don't go in and out. It's one of those aspects where this is a very living city with very old problems, and among that is basically the dead of the necropolis. Um, so there tends to be burial rites that prevent the dead from rising again, and that's a big part of life and death in Ptolus. Some of the poor do not have access to these things, and that can definitely turn quickly into people die and they're going to rise again as somebody's pawn because somebody wasn't able to pay for the right to essentially seal them from being used. Um, Otherwise, that whole area up to the kind of western end is more or less just an amalgamation of districts where you have the North Market is where a lot of kind of food goods come to market. The South Market is pretty similar, but kind of tends to be a little bit more trade goods. Midtown has a lot of the kind of like middle class kind of lodgings and access to things like goods. Midtown tends to be where a lot of adventurers live because it's where the actual Delver Square is, which is a very central point for adventurers that I'll get into shortly here. The Temple District is a little bit north of the actual river, the King's River that kind of flows through the city. And then the Guildsman District is just all of their kind of like industrial existence in this place. And then there's a small, what is that, sixth district of this blend that is the Warrens. And that is effectively the place where the guards don't go because the criminals run it. Not like wealthy criminals, that's like people who have no hope left, that crime is their only choice. Um, I don't know. I feel like there's kind of like this thought that like old mobsters always had like a code of honor. The criminals in the Warrens do not have such codes. These are people who might die tonight because they're cold going to sleep, so they'd sooner slit your throat to take your clothes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, basically they'll do anything to survive.
Yeah. So all of those areas are just the outer kind of city. If you go from the actual cliffs and you start to walk west towards Old Town and River Gate, you're always walking uphill when you go west and go deeper into the actual landmass here. And part of that is because as you walk up, this place has a massive black spire of stone that rises like a little mountain until it basically becomes a pinnacle, and it rises about a mile or so, like 2 kilometers into the air. After maybe, say, like half a kilometer high, it's no longer getting narrower. It's just like a tower of stone that rises up. There's a lot of kind of mythic understanding about what this stuff was in the far distant past, but it's basically understood that this spire is one of the greatest seats of evil in this land. Um, People who know the most kind of understand that a super, super evil person created the spire, like grew it out of the earth, and made their residence in the peak of the spire, which is most often above the clouds, beyond view of the people below. Some like 1,000 years later, another really, really evil person made their home about halfway up the spire, um, which is kind of in view, kind of sits at like cloud level sometimes. Um, but it's kind of one of those things. A lot of people almost try to ignore the existence of the spire to where they don't necessarily notice it day to day, especially people who are living a very like middle or lower class life. But leading up to the spire, as you leave the southern market, you have Old Town, which is where they had a lot of the original encampment of this city was Old Town. That was the original kind of defensive position to guard the actual waterway into the Bay of Ptolus. That is quite literally the original old Ptolus is inside of Old Town. I forgot that I could circle stuff here like that. I didn't mean to do that. And then the river's gate is, the river's gate is to the north of Old Town, and that's another one of the older portions of the city. It is again one of the more defensive or defensible positions of the city because it was effectively a way for the old uh, castled off area to guard itself and its water supply. So like that's kind of what the river gate is it's almost as old as Old Town, but it's that recognition that if we are ever put under siege, we need to protect our water. Um, and then the actual nobles' quarters is essentially just smushed up against the cliffside of the Spire and Old Town. So you have the wealthiest of people in the nobles' quarters, a lot of old but still very wealthy people in Old Town, among also kind of the military and the seat of the government. Some of the kind of highest class but not necessarily noble people in River's Gate. And then everything else is pretty much going to be middle class, um, or people who kind of like made everything for themselves.
Cool.
So, one of my first questions here, and part of why this is a little bit more of a free-form thing, is that gives you kind of enough with the city to understand a little bit of somebody who might live here or somebody who might be from near here. With the idea of creating a new adventure today, do you have anybody in mind that you would like to play? Can you think of anybody? Um, Even if at first like you don't necessarily know what class you want to do, can you think of like, do you want to play? Oh wait a second, I should also add. Everyone understands that the evil that created the Spire also has there's like an old civilization that grew down into the earth. Um, Most people don't necessarily know the age of it, but most people who live in the city understand that to be a delver, which effectively the delvers are their words for adventurers, to be a delver is one of the people who basically you find a way into the underground and you start to explore. And just like adventuring in Faerun, going into the underground, into the I can't think of the name of it offhand right now, is a great way to get rich. There's a lot of people who now live in Old Town or live in River's Gate who started with nothing, and it was simply by being adventurous enough to basically it's dungeon delving. It's going into a place that most people are smart enough to stay away from. Most people will die searching into it. But that's one of the things about Ptolus is there's a lot of things to explore, and one of the greatest ways to change your lot in life is to explore down into the earth. Um, so like if you were to create a new person, which theoretically we've already agreed that you are, do you want to be from the city? Do you want to be from near the city? Um, are you coming here to change your lot in life because you're poor and you want to rise? Are you coming here to change your lot in life because you're really wealthy and feel like nothing is actually earned because it's all, from like your bloodline? Do you have any thoughts there?
Well, I'm thinking someone from town is probably a bit lower end of the mid class, trying to get richer to basically move up in the world.
Gotcha. So, do you imagine yourself kind of unsatisfied with a parent's lot in life who's maybe like a textile merchant, and you want to become a delver because you want to rise and you just don't see that as possible as an actual like merchant? Do you see yourself as somebody who maybe your parents got out of the Warrens and you're now in the city a little bit more proper and you want to make sure that you don't slide back? Um, are you maybe somebody from the docks who has a little bit more of an attachment to the sea and are going from there? Where do you think you want to be from? Do you want to be kind of like merchant middle class, kind of freshly risen middle class?
Okay, I can't think. What would a dock worker technically be?
Dock workers could definitely fit into a lot of those different things. I think a lot of people who probably work the docks are probably one of those things where they can come from a lot of different uh, backgrounds, kind of thing. Dock workers have a pretty similar existence to kind of like a delver, in that like when you think of like some deep sea fishers in our world, those are some of those professions where people are paid really well because it's one of those professions where one mistake and you're dead. So I would say a dock worker could fit a lot of different things. You might be a little bit more prone for a dock worker to be somebody who's from another area of the world. So maybe this is the first time that you were able to get on a boat that was going to Ptolus, and your whole aim was once you got here delivering like your goods, that you snuck off the boat and you're trying to like effectively like nationalize into becoming a somebody who lives here in Ptolus instead of like going home to where you were from. You're hoping to make it big in the city.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah. Oh, and just to ask, where do you want me to create characters later when I'm actually creating it, or like still beyond 20? Or
My bad. I'll send you another link to that for one that's actually set up for Ptolus in particular.
okay.
As far as characters go, though, this is a lot more free form than what I would normally do for other campaigns, because it is a different world. Things play a little bit differently, especially once we get into things a little more traditionally. Like if you have dice at your house, you are much more welcome in this setting, as far as I'm concerned, to roll real dice than to actually roll um, in the game. But there is a dice roller uh, in Owlbear Rodeo too.
I think I'm gonna use the dice roller in the game just because I want to see how it works.
Gotcha. So I just sent the link to you for this D&D Beyond campaign.
All right, yeah, got it. Oh, and then what sources are like allowed to use?
Effectively, this is back to it's pretty much everything.
Okay.
Alrighty, I think we did 72 is the number, so I think that's 26, 24, 22. So if you look in Owlbear Rodeo, at the top left, there's a little square with a smaller square like in its top left position. If you click on that, that should show the dice tray.
Yeah, I see it.
I think the bottom button, I don't even know what to say that looks like. Maybe like Italy, or maybe it's like Central America between the two Americas. It says hide or show the or share the dice rolls. But if you go ahead and roll 4d6, will produce your first stat. Solid. Start right off with an 18. Oh, it doesn't actually show me. I assume 18 is all four dice. What is the lowest of those?
The lowest is a 3, so that's 3 5s and a 3.
Gotcha. So you've got a 15 for this first stat, which is going to give you a 15, and then we subtract that from 24 for a 9. So that gives you your first two stats.
I have 1 15 and 1 9.
Correct. And then we'll do the same thing again. Roll 4. Oh, you actually have to clear this one. So I think in the bottom of the dice tray, yeah,
Can't
you'll
I
see a
just
button.
reroll? There's a button for reroll dice.
Oh, yeah, that would work. And then this one will get subtracted from 20. Oh, I think I
But
did that wrong. What's the lowest die on the 14?
it's a 3 here, so that's an 11.
Gotcha. I'm pretty sure I said the first one wrong. I think we do 26, 24, 22. So the first number is a 15 and 11. The second group is going to be an 11 and a 13. And then if you do one more reroll,
Let's see, the lowest is a 1, so that's a
a
14.
14. So you should have, for the stats of this character, a 15, a 14, a 13, two 11s, and then an 8.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I like that way of rolling stats. I'm not sure if you've actually done it yet because Sages and Slayers is a pretty old campaign at this point. I think I still had you guys roll as a group versus like this setup is everybody's going to start with 72 stat points. The question is like, do you have really high ones and therefore really low ones too? Do you have kind of very middle of the ground? You have one that's really high, a lot that are kind of middle ground. I like this setup though, is like everybody has the same number of stats. You can theoretically all be just as powerful, but it prevents like somebody from being stupendously powerful when everybody else is just like mediocre.
Hey, yeah, I can see that. It's a pretty good way to roll, to be honest.
Yeah, I stole that from somebody who was creating the idea, and it's fun because you essentially just adjust the actual number that you're going for. If you want to be a very like superhero kind of super powered campaign, you're like, all right, we're going to go for 75 in stats. And I think that's then starting like 28, 26, 24. I think that ends up being a 75. Um, but yeah, it's a very solid way as far as I'm concerned to roll these because it's just like, yeah, you just pick whatever arbitrary number you want and then you let everybody go. All right, so we've got you as a like dock worker, potentially new to Ptolus. Do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts? Do you want to be human? Do you want to be like a rare race? Do you want to be a minority race, but one of the more common races? Do you have any thoughts there about this go around? Do you want to be a human?
Actually, I'm kind of waffling. If are all races available, or is it like
In general, I'm not necessarily keen on flying races. That's one of the biggest things that I try to avoid, but more or less, I'd say all races are available. Who are you thinking about?
kind of like trying the Triton? Would have given me a edge on dock worker, being able to swim really well and breathe underwater.
What is it? Are the Tritons from?
It's more the Canyon. I think Monsters of the Multiverse.
Yeah, I just feel like they did it first, so I have it in something else. Polos. Okay, that's where I've got it.
Ah,
Monsters of the Multiverse sadly didn't actually create anything new. They just revamped a lot of stuff. I really like how they switched some ways things work, but like nothing was new in the book, and that was one of the reasons I'm like looking at it. I'm like, I don't know if I can spend $60 on a book that doesn't actually do anything new. Yeah, so as far as I'm concerned with a Triton, it's going to be one of those things where you'll certainly deal with a certain amount of always being an outsider. Uh, but I don't see any reason in particular to say no to a Triton. Um, I'd say that's just something to keep in mind is anybody who's not used to dealing with non-humans might look at you weird. Anybody who doesn't like Tritons might treat you really bad. But this is like a city where there's a very notable orc who is a priest who daily can be seen on the streets of the city going about his business. There's also a minotaur who's kind of a similar situation. You wouldn't be the first person who's a race that's a little bit less liked um, inside of a city like Ptolus. So perhaps even uh, your you long ago left Triton civilization and you found humans in the Empire are despicable, but you always heard if you're gonna go somewhere and be around humans, Ptolus is that place. So is Triton accessible in D&D Beyond how I have everything? Can you select it right now?
yeah.
Excellent. Um, so background. What kind of thoughts do you have about going a little bit deeper into this? Do you, um, I guess maybe not necessarily go for background right away. Do you have thoughts about your class? Um, You know what you would like your Triton to be.
Trying to think. Like thinking maybe Artificer or Ranger for some reason.
Gotcha. You at least started spellcasters in the past? Artificer, in my opinion, can be one of the most complicated classes because they're kind of a jack of all trades for spellcasters. Um, and more so than bards, part of that is because they can change so much of what they do. They like can flip flop to a lot of different roles in a group. Not trying to tell you not to do it or to do it, but in my opinion, Artificer is one of the more complicated classes. Rangers, I 100% use the Tasha's rules for Rangers because I think that's one of the only things about Tasha's that was really well done was finally kind of bringing Rangers up a little bit. Um, do you want a little bit to kind of think about that still? And we can kind of like maybe flesh out a little bit more about your character, or do you know which you would like to choose?
I think I'll go for Ranger. But
Gotcha.
sorry, what's the Tasha's thing with Ranger? Is the Tasha's thing though those optional class features or?
I was responding to you without my mic picking up because I still have that issue if I'm in the wrong thing. It doesn't recognize it. But yeah, it's the optional class features. So there's three big things that I believe Tasha's did. Among them is giving you specific subclass related spells that you just gain, so it increases their spell list a little bit. Um, they also did that with sorcerers. That's another one thing I kind of liked about Tasha's was expanding sorcerers kind of needed as well. The second thing was is it kind of modified how they did their specialty, like their favored terrain. I believe Tasha's basically made it so instead of choosing when you create your character, you can almost like meditate to re-specialize your terrain, and become, you know, if you move from the mountains into a forest, you can take a little bit of time to basically gain that specialty now in a forest. Basically, the recognition that a ranger can go anywhere and be pretty specialized for it. And then the third was more specifically for the Beastmaster itself. I believe they did a lot for the Beast Companion as well as changing kind of the action economy, not just making the Beast Companion a little bit more survivable.
Oh, okay, cool.
I believe Rangers have to choose their subclass at level 3, but let me confirm. Let me check on that real quick.
Yeah, it's at level 3.
Gotcha. So yeah, it's probably a little bit simpler at first here. Once you get everything set, like I'll look over your character, make sure it's got the actual settings properly there. Um, but yeah, the Tasha's setup should give you um, a lot more viability in how the character.
All right.
Bam. So there's a zoomed in view of the dock ward here. Um, so this will be kind of the general setting of where you will start you off at. Uh, the numbers in general at present, that's just kind of something we'll have to deal with. But if you see on kind of like the top section of this, there's like a bird who's in the building. That is the town guards. Kind of across the street, that's effectively like the fire patrol. Each district has these two buildings in them, basically where you can find the closest guards and where you can find somebody to help with fires. The Warrens is the only exception to this rule. Guards don't go into the Warrens, and the fire patrols don't go into the Warrens. They'll attempt to stop a fire from spreading out of the Warrens, but if the Warrens ever catch fire, they just let it burn.
All
So
right.
a lot of these locations are just like bars and kind of like storage locations. Um, when you get to Ptolus, uh, do you think you're the type of person that you're like just going to a bar to kind of uh, enjoy some drink? Are you looking to go gamble? Are you trying to get into the city as fast as possible?
Uh, I think he's probably going to be trying to get into the city as fast as possible.
Gotcha. So, with your kind of venture to make it into the city, do you think you're just kind of getting to the docks, get paid by your captain, and you're just immediately going to kind of like look to this cliff face? You see these long switchbacks that climb, and you can hear like the loud noise of the docks all around you is on some level deafening after being at sea for quite some time, where you simply hear the water, which is probably pretty calming. But then you see this cliff and you can see there's like a constant stream of people who are by hand rolling barrels up this slow incline through these switchbacks. Some people have them like strapped to their backs. Occasionally, you see somebody with a beast of burden who's taking stuff up. Do you like look to get paid by somebody to help them drag something up? Or are you just kind of, as soon as you can get away from the boat, you're going to start heading up just with your own goods?
Yeah. I think seeing as they're trying to get up in the world, they need money, so they would probably or think to get some work while they're moving in the right direction, so to say. Work their way up.
Gotcha. Um, do, do, do. So this is close to where I want to take a break and actually create like a little mini adventure for you, but I do still kind of want to ask you if you have any thoughts. Is there anything a little more unique about your character? Where are you coming here um with like desires to start to delve into the underworld? Are you coming here because you have like a predisposition against the kind of demonic and undead threats of the necropolis? Do you have any thoughts about what makes what's your call to action for your character? Are you yeah, I don't know how to necessarily say it without just asking like more. Like, do you have any idea where you want to go with your character at present?
I'm just trying to think. Uh, don't understand. Like, what's unique? Like, what's my goal? Or is that right? How I interpreted that? Ara, have you said anything or?
Yeah, I'm doing it again. So one of the things that like Justin and I started with last time was this discussion. Like his character is kind of second generation middle class. Like his parents, I think one of his parents basically like cleans for some wealthier people. And she's like a seamstress, so she's often like that's what it was. She's basically makes dresses for like this wealthy family that she works for, and then when she's not actually at their home, she can make stuff and sells that like still in the gilded district kind of thing. And then I think his father was actually a member of one of the guilds. Basically, there were two different merchants, kind of upper middle class, in that the wife, his mother, already sort of had an in with a very wealthy family. Um, so he kind of has that kind of second generation, only he's a gambler and kind of perpetually in debt, lives on his own, still in the gilded district, but is often kind of going between wins. So one of the things that we did there was at some point he won from somebody who was basically broke at that time, like won a big game of cards, and he took away a little map that he was hoping was a way into the underground and into the actual um, catacombs beneath the city itself. So that was kind of like his almost call to action to become a delver, is it's kind of like hitting rock bottom. He took a map in lieu of payment. Hopefully this map works out so he might come out on top. Otherwise he has nothing. So I'm kind of looking for like, did you come here because you found uh say like a conch shell with a map drawn into it? Did you come here because you've heard of the Delvers and you want to go deep into the city? Did you come here to fight the undead of the necropolis? Um, did you come here for more nefarious reasons? Just kind of looking for any other thoughts about your character as you kind of arise at them, that I might be able to create a little mini adventure for us to go to in like the part two of today.
I think he would have gone here because he heard about Delvers, about like how they make money. Like there's riches to be had, basically. Yeah. So I'm thinking, what am I thinking?
Do you have a failsafe? If this doesn't work out for you in Ptolus, can you go home? Are you do you have a home to return to? Uh
I think no, actually, because I'm thinking I'm desperate. This is like either make it here or literally break it.
Gotcha. So it's definitely a good opportunity for a little bit more of that kind of tragic backstory where perhaps something horrendous had happened in the past. Um, do you think it was your past when maybe something horrible happened? Are you kind of second generation out of the water? Like, did your mother escape while she was pregnant and you were born in a human settlement? You two did everything you could to hide yourselves, and you basically have like run from settlement to settlement, always hiding yourself? Or are you more open about who you are? Um, and you just kind of deal with things. Um, you don't even necessarily have to answer that for me. Um, I feel like it's probably a pretty acceptable time. Take a break, allow you to finish character creation. Let me design a little bit of a dungeon, and maybe we'll jump back in like 20 minutes or so.
All right, sounds fine.
Excellent. It won't be absolutely crazy, but yeah, let's check back at like 15 till
15 till. Okay.
I'm also not necessarily going anywhere. I'll have my earpiece in if you have questions. Alrighty. One thing I have in mind, I feel like I could almost just do all of this without necessarily taking the time. Are you going through character creation fine?
Yeah, I think I'm done actually.
Alright, cool. I'm gonna take a look at that real quick. If I said the Dread Pirate Roberts to you, does that connect any bells?
I mean, it does, but I'm drawing a blank. Why is it Dread Pirate Robert? Isn't that Princess Bride for some reason?
It is indeed. So I'm gonna give you a Dread Pirate Roberts backstory here, as far as things go. Um, I'm gonna say on some level, we're going to have you kind of be almost the kind of like protege of effectively his name is actually going to be the Dread Pirate Wesley. So it's again a callback to that very character. But you are going to be one of the actual sailors from his previous life. We're going to have you be somebody who's actually leaving the ship. Um, so we'll kind of like play that off, but basically, he's been grooming this new, uh, the new captain who would have been you, but we'll say like you kind of turned it down. So like the two of you kind of are the only like seasoned people on the ship, leaving behind who is now the new Dread Pirate. But that's going to be kind of like how we start off here.
Okay.
I'm going to still have you roll for hit points. I believe a ranger is a D10.
Yeah, I think so. Just gonna check. A D10. Oh, that's good. Sorry, just gotta check. Are you talking or
No, my bad. At that point, I was actually modifying some things.
okay, just making sure.
No, it's definitely rough. It is difficult. Alrighty. So I think the plan is we're going to kind of pick up with the two of you. Basically, you've come into Ptolus. Your ship is moored out in the harbor. You are not on the docks. So you're kind of preparing like the last of these small rowboats to row like the last of some of these goods into the actual city. The actual remaining crew who's kind of staying behind is effectively um, the person the two of you have been calling the Dread Pirate Roberts. You know the older man who you are going into Ptolus with as uh, the Dread Pirate Wesley, is what we'll call him. But basically, you've already worked with him for some amount of time. He has made enough wealth to be happy and is looking for a chance to kind of create maybe he wants to do a little seafood just like shop so he can just be a restaurant owner for the rest of his life, kind of living a very simple life, no longer in danger. So you've got the vessel all set. You've been living with the current crew as kind of the first and second in, or the second and third in command on the vessel. I wish I knew the names other than first mate, and maybe it's the second mate. I don't know enough about ships to really give you that one. But the two of you have made a point of, always calling this new person the Dread Pirate Roberts, and always kind of showing him that respect to really build up this mythos. And the two of you are preparing to leave behind. And on some level, Wesley always kind of was sad that he couldn't pass the ship on to you, but is also kind of happy to know that your path leads in a pretty similar trajectory as his retirement, and kind of this general hope that perhaps Tolus will be a new place um, to kind of grow and expand from for both of you. We've got you pretty young, so maybe um, your parents or wherever you kind of draw some of that history. Um, Maybe it's been 5 years with Wesley. Maybe you've been 15 years. It's kind of up to you how you want to expand that relationship, like in the long run. But basically, Wesley will also be the person who you can go to for your feature, which is the ship's passage. He's basically always going to be your contact to gain a lot of information, as well potentially be your actual sidekick if you go into a little more dangerous situations on the kind of get go here while you don't know anybody in the city. So one of the things about mooring off of the actual docks Part of the goal is to avoid paying the taxes of docking. Part of the goal is to avoid getting searched. So there's a certain amount of that plays into the pirates are maybe not even calling them pirates, but kind of the idea that oh shit, what are the pirates called? Um,
Privateers?
yeah, privateers. When it was basically, it's like, look, don't steal from the French. You can steal from the English all you want. Bam, you're a great pirate privateer. Or don't steal from the English. You can steal from the French all you want. Bam, you're a great privateer. That's kind of like how they operate. You might steal from a lot of different vessels and attack a lot of different people. It's just kind of one of those things like maybe if they're flying the Empire's flag, you're like, all right, fine, we're not. Well, they got a really nice golden boat. Maybe we'll steal this one. So you guys kind of like have sat on that like fine line for quite some time here. Um, when you all are preparing to uh, basically hop into your own boat. You have a little bit of gold between yourselves. What do you start? You've got 10 gold. Um, this is one thing I would advise you. Perhaps don't necessarily have 10 gold pieces. Maybe break that down into some smaller choices where perhaps you have like a silver and 50 copper pieces in a purse that's like outward, and then have like the other like 9.85 gold in like your backpack somewhere else. But going into big cities is a reason to have a lot of different purses, so a thief can't steal all of your money in one go. Um, because there is a certain level of wherever your gold actually is, you might get thieved. But Wesley will at some point look to you and ask, do you intend to pay your taxes as you must and get paperwork to make yourself legal? Or are we hoping to sneak by and make our way into the city eh, more exciting?
I'm thinking the more exciting way. You can always become legal later.
Do you see yourself as have you kept what you are hidden from more people, or have you been a little bit more upfront with it to kind of force people to deal with it and basically try to normalize your life? Like, do you hide who you are, or do you kind of make sure it's on the forefront?
I would probably more on the forefront. Like, here I am. Uh, Just look at me.
Gotcha. If we intend to blend in today. Oh wait, I should ask you. What's your name? Is it Malkin?
I was, yeah, I mean, Malkin or Malshan.
Oh, that's perfectly up to you to let me know how. Malshin. Okay. Uh, Perhaps today, Malshin, will be the day that we are a little bit more secretive of what you are, and he'll kind of see your reaction like I'm never like this, and just kind of like reaching up and almost pulling the hood over your head a little bit, tucking your green hair a little bit deeper into the hood. And if we were going to pay our taxes, I would understand. But today, perhaps it is best for us to go unseen. And that way, when you decide, or when we decide to be a little bit more legal, then they can know. But he basically takes a moment to kind of like almost try to hide your personage before we start to paddle away, kind of looking to, for now, let's try to look like we're just two old men, um, just kind of like trying to make our way in here. And he's still pretty strong rowing the boat. You can see signs of him being kind of aged and almost having like sore and like cracky joints kind of thing, but in the long run still kind of in his prime despite deciding like now's to retire. Um and kind of asks you to do the same where you maybe hunch over a little bit to raise your shoulders a little bit and kind of keep your head down. And the two of you will start to paddle towards the docks out coming out from the dock district here. One of the first things that you all will do is kind of landing on one of these smaller docks. You can see a few of them have little like guard posts out towards the end of them. Those tend to be for some of the larger ships that are coming in and still need like deep water. Some of the shorter docks don't have a building on them, but you can see that there are guards kind of standing at posts at the end of them. But you can basically see one of the first hurdles you're going to have is basically landing. You're going to pretty soon meet guards, whether they're waiting on the dock or at the end of the dock. The guards are kind of watching the different flow of people. You can see that they stop a lot of the people and start to check paperworks. But you kind of have like this ahead. Do you have thoughts? Do you want to land at one of the ones that has guards kind of like around the end of the dock? Or would you like to try to land at one of the ones where, you're going to come up to the guards right away? What kind of thoughts do you have about where you send Wesley, like directing him towards this dock versus another?
I'm thinking can try to like evade the guards as much as we can, basically. So the further away.
What do you mean the further away? Like you want to land on the dock and have guards who are like waiting at the end of the dock so you can land furthest away from them? Or do you mean like the northernmost or like the southernmost dock?
Okay, I was thinking like the first one, like the landing with the guards further away. I think I'm just describing that really wrong.
You want to get on the dock far away from the guards. So you then walk up the dock and eventually come to the guards.
Yeah, basically. Then we can get a chance to, well, scare them out, basically. See if there's anything we can do.
So, um, do you have thoughts on how you would pass by the guards? Do you intend to you want to like try to sneak past them? Are you hoping to distract them? Do you want to try to bribe them? Wesley can basically inform you there's tends to be fees for coming in, taxes for coming into cities, and then also checks for paperworks as well.
Yeah, might be counterintuitive. Thinking bribing, basically. That's why I wanted to go like the ones with where we can have some time to watch them before to see if there's like any indication of them taking bribes before we get there, or
Well, they're all collecting money. You can pretty well see, like, these guards, part of what they do is that collection of money. So if your intention is to try to bribe your way in without showing paperwork, you can basically, you know, choose an amount of coin to give them with that idea. But yeah, so the two of you can arrive at one of these docks, um, and kind of start to walk down. Can see that there are indeed a couple of guards at the end of it collecting a little bit of coin. One of them seems a little bit more casually watching the other two who are kind of dealing with everybody, and this one seems to have a little bit more of kind of like that overlook of he's making sure that they're doing their job. Have a pretty solid sense watching that this third person would probably catch you if you try to simply walk by the guards. He seems to be pretty good about kind of like, pointing out like the people coming off the dock, making sure. Um, yeah, you see a couple of the groups that kind of come over this dock seem to kind of get stopped. But you do notice after a moment, like, seems like those two people just walked by and the three guards didn't recognize. It's hard to tell whether those two got by because the guards were busy or maybe the guards already recognized them. But if you wanted to, you can basically, say you're now like 50 or 60 feet from the guards, can move up to them and purposefully come to them to pay your way and bribe. Or as you get closer to them, you now know, like, at least some people don't have to stop at the guards. What kind of thoughts do you have?
Well, seeing some people get through, I think this Masha would try to, like when they're busy with someone else, just try to sneak past basically. I mean, I think how to explain it, like walk with a purpose, they they have paid. That's a way to describe. Like when people go into places they're not supposed to be, dressed like workers, like they have a purpose.
Yeah, one
Basically
of
doing
those
that thing.
things. Look like you belong, don't look suspicious. So instead of doing a stealth here, let me have you do a performance. But can I actually have the performance rolled with your stealth bonus? So it is effectively a charisma stealth check.
Let's see. And how do I roll it? Do I just roll a d20 and add my?
That's one of those weird things. If you actually look in D&D Beyond, there's additional skills at the bottom, and that can allow you to create a custom skill. But realistically, I think I'm on you. You have a +3 to your stealth,
Yeah, I do.
and it looks like that's from dexterity. So effectively, because you don't have proficiency, this is realistically just a charisma check. It's just a performance, which is effectively -1. My bad. I said it like that before I actually looked at your skills.
All right. So just roll a. Can I roll through
Uh,
beyond
that
skill?
that's one of the things. No, but if you roll on D&D Beyond, you can simply tell me what it is. But otherwise, this is part of what I was getting at. Is this is a little bit closer to playing pen and paper as far as I'm concerned. You can roll the die, like just roll a d20. We'll then subtract the one, and you can tell me what it is. You can roll in Owlbear. You can roll in D&D Beyond.
Yeah, I just roll in D&D Beyond. So That's an 11.
Gotcha. Um, as you're kind of like passing by, the third guard is gonna kind of like look to you and kind of calling out, "You two there, old man, have you paid your taxes? Bringing in any goods? Is it just that crate between the two of you?" So, seemingly having caught the guard's attention, Wesley has, that smaller chest that's kind of um, the remainder of his goods to kind of retire with. What sort of thought do you have as the guard seems to grab it? His attention seems to move towards you all.
How? I'm just thinking. Do we know how much the taxes would have been to pay like properly?
Let me have you roll a history check. And this will be a little bit more to know whether Wesley knows than perhaps you, but we'll do your history so you're the one.
Yeah, that's
So just
14.
20,
Yep.
14. Um, yeah, so I think he can. Oh shit, I looked this up when I was running Justin's. I don't think I have it quickly on mine. I think it's a pretty I think it's a silver day. That even seems expensive. Um, Silver a day for merchants, uh, and it would be lower to kind of return. Yeah, silver a day for merchants. Like if you don't have your paperwork, if you're local, um, it's 5 copper. So, do you want to like throw him a bag of coins and kind of say this will be enough? Like this should be enough. Do you want to try to show like forged paperwork and get away with like a lesser? Are you sticking to the bribe? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking bribe, so like going up to him and taking out like 8 copper, and I'm thinking like it was 5 if you had paperwork and lived in the city, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go. Uh, yeah, we seem to have misplaced our papers, but uh, there's a little extra, little just like to like a little fee for not having our papers, right? And give him 8 copper.
Do you intend to bribe the commissioner's men? This is a crime to be jailed for. And he kind of looks back at you too.
No bribe. Just a little fee for misplacing our papers.
Roll a persuasion here for me.
Why do I always go for characters with low charisma?
Failing at stuff is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's -1 on that 5.
Oh wait, okay, I see a 19. So the 5 was
Yeah,
so
sorry.
for so he's going to kind of like um not necessarily drawing his sword right now, but he kind of puts a hand down onto the pommel of his sword, and it's pretty well recognized. Like this hand is now in a position to also draw said sword, and he looks to the other guards, and he's these two need a bit of correcting. If you watch Doc 7, I'll be back in. Looking over you two for a moment. Just a few minutes. And then he kind of looks over them again and he's like, um, Lionel, you're in charge. And you see is like the third, like one of these people like scoffs, and you can tell like one of these guards is Lionel, and the other one doesn't think he should be the one in charge. But you see is like Lionel kind of smirks a little bit, looking at the other, and they kind of like uh drop their head in like a. Nah, I guess they would do like an actual salute as this other guard kind of steps away. And he's going to kind of move just a few feet away, pushing open a door with his offhand, still the like left hand on the halberd of his sword, and the pommel of his sword, right hand opening this door into a small little building, and he's just going to kind of nod his head for the two of you to enter.
Oh, I guess we're entering.
So the two of you kind of move inside. You can see like just a small little desk, a couple of chairs around. Basically, this is just a small little like guard post here. There's like a bed in kind of the back, or maybe like a bunk bed of like 3 beds high in the back of this little location. And he just kind of goes to a small little desk that's up against the wall, but he's sitting kind of 90 degrees away from it. So his left hand still on his sword, right hand kind of like laying across the desk. The desk is on his right, and he's kind of looking towards you at the like the entrance door, and he's just gonna tell you, pull up a seat here. You say you've lost your paperwork, and he's just gonna kind of like tap the chest of Wesley. As I suspected, your paperwork seems to have been left here in my work here. And he's like sifts through a few papers on his desk, kind of pulling away these 2 documents. He's gonna take a moment and he stamps each of them, and he kind of looks back at you. And your fee for today is a gold piece. And he kind of like looks over the two of you each.
Ah, it's steep. Oh,
Your paperwork is fully in order, my friend. And as he kind of like spins the paper across to you, you can see that like while this is a very um kind of simple document, very similar to, I don't know, in Sweden, I assume you've got birth certificates kind of like we do, but it looks a lot like what I would say a birth certificate is. You can basically see that this is a certificate that says, the name section is blank here. It says that this person is a member of the Empire, blah, 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 blah. And you can basically see that he's about to sell you a document that would more or less say you are a member of the Empire.
All right. And just because he's like that, he's gonna take out 1 gold and like 5 silver pieces. That was 1.5 gold, right?
You can do uh you can do another persuasion. I'm tempted to say at disadvantage. But let me see a persuasion check here. Actually, if you'll do me the favor of rolling 2 d20s, I think that's the best idea.
All right. That's a 5 again with a -1.
What was the second one? If you roll 2d20?
Yeah, the first one was a 12 and the second one was a 5.
Gotcha. So an 11 and a 4.
Yep.
That's one of the things, like, I think a lot of tests are a scale of success. I'm inclined to say disadvantage, but I wanted to see 2 because I was looking for both of them. So maybe he looks at you, little bit of a smirk on his head. 1 gold, 7 silver. And you'll find these documents are in order.
All right, and take up the last 2 silver pieces and 1 gold, 7.
Gotcha. As far as what you subtract from yourself here, Wesley is still paying for himself, so just do what, like, take off 8 copper? Not copper. Take off 8 silver, and then he'll do 9 silver.
All right.
So, kind of like standing up, you see as he slips the coins into a little, like, um, not like a waist pocket, but you can see that it's like inside of his belt. And he'll kind of look to you all and he's like, now that your paperwork is in order, I would incline you to be a little bit more careful in the guards that you attempt to break the law with. And he kind of just like smirks at you a little bit. Not everyone is forgivable.
Well, then it was most fortuitous that we met such a forgiving soul.
What kind of weaponry does Malshin have?
2 short swords and a long bow.
Gotcha. So looking to you, he'll kind of like ooh, I forgot to even think about. Looking to you, he'll kind of look to you and say, certain individuals of skill can always be used in the Commissioner's Guard, and you might find favor in a new city. Do you serve others well? You can see he's kind of inclining towards, are you looking to join like a city guard or to basically like join the military?
Um, and I would like look at Wesley and just a little bit of smirkling. Well, think this man would know if I can serve well the most, but yes, if there's opportunities for it, I would not say no to work.
Like pull out another bit of parchment from the table, um, writing down a little bit of information here. Uh, you'll kind of see as you kind of see as he writes almost like a little bit of a personal recommendation, and I think he's going to. This is where the city's a little bit bigger than my recollection offhand. I think he's going to tell you if you decide to follow through. If you find yourself on hard times, seek out the commissioner's guard. You would do well. And kind of like reaches out to squeeze like your bicep, like your upper arm, like feeling out the muscles that are kind of hidden underneath your cloak and kind of like baggy clothes. Do you pull away from him?
No, I would probably just let him.
You would do well serving your emperor, and the commissioner of Ptolus would do well to have you. If you find times troubling, or simply are prepared for advancement, seek us out. And then, just as kind of a caveat, the alternative is basically to find the closest guardhouse, and they could also get you to effectively like an entry into the military. But looking over the little document that he has, you can see his name is Innistrad, which is basically Intrahd. Um, and you can see that he kind of signs it Captain.
Ah, no shit. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Kind of like patting against his waist. Um, maybe it was a pleasure to return your paperwork that's been lost for so long. And then, kind of stepping back towards the door, he'll once again kind of reach open with it. Effectively, once you guys exchange the actual coinage there, he brought his actual hand away from that hilt as well. But kind of opening the door back for you all, he looks back towards the others, and you see as he like takes a second to see what they're doing, looks back to you, and with a kind of a nod, will basically send you effectively on your way. So, if you guys are kind of in that southern area, vaguely about that dock that has the 239 on it, um, kind of at that little building, like a little bit south of the one that says 235. You can see like that building, the blue one where the 235 is just kind of like lower on it, is a larger building, kind of has like a rowdy noise of people kind of inside of it. You can see there's a certain level of that's clearly a tavern, and it has like a big, like masts coming up from the center of that building, and you can see that there's like a tattered but otherwise relatively whole sail kind of hanging from this mast of the building. Um, that seems to be a bar there to the north of you. You can somewhat have seen that the north end of the dock district is where the switchbacks start that actually climb their way out of this area. And you can probably see most of the uh, buildings along this coast. Like you're on a like big sandy kind of like outcropping beneath this cliff. Most of these buildings are quite old. A lot of them are like storage or warehouses. A lot of them are old. A lot of them kind of sit at slanted angles. Occasionally, you hear the activity of a tavern, kind of like the people making a ruckus inside. Again, the Silken Sail is the one that is closest to you. What kind of thoughts do you all have as Innistrad kind of lets you out of that building and basically sends you on your way? Are you going to immediately start walking for the way out, or do you want to actually like go into a tavern and kind of search out something that might be, or like search somebody out? I guess you could like go into a tavern to try to meet people and maybe see if there's any work that you can get taking stuff up to the city proper. You could potentially find somebody who's still out on the docks.
Yeah, I think we would go to the tavern, see if we can find someone with, well, any work would get us into the city proper, like delivery or whatever.
Gotcha. So yeah, you can go into that first one. That's pretty close to where you guys are. Its name is the Silken Sail. Of course, its way of showing this is the sail over top the actual building itself. Most of these buildings are have no name, but they have little symbols kind of written into them. A lot of the actual like warehouses are simply just numbered buildings. Some of them occasionally have a symbol. You see occasional signs of different like crests on things, and then they're numbered. But basically, like once you walk into this tavern, you can see that there's a big, just kind of central area where the tables are simply upturned barrels with things like doors set across two tables to make like the door or two doors set across two barrels to make a table. Smaller tables are simply just a barrel, and you can basically see that empty kegs are turned into tables. And then, like, maybe smaller kegs are turned into seats. But this place is basically just an empty warehouse that effectively they turned into a bar by selling the alcohol that created a new table or created a new seat. With enough of them, they created a new bar. So everything in here is all just like repurposed kind of barrels and things. But walking in, you can see that this building has an entrance on each side. The actual far side of the building seems to be a little bit more properly like a very large door, and you can see that it basically would have been able to open for like a horse and carriage to leave this place. Perhaps like people bringing stuff in from the docks by hand and then leaving once everything's well laden on a cart. But now it basically is just another small door that people are coming and going from. There's a bar on each side of the building along the long parallel walls. So when you walk in from the edge of the water, the bar is to the right of you and close by, but there's another bar on the left side of the building, but along that far wall. But basically, if you walk in either door, there's a bar on your right. And then there's just probably about, say, like 30 to 40% occupancy here. There's a few tables that you could find alone. There's a few tables that you can see there's like maybe a group or two of people who are close to each other. There's some tables that very clearly seem to be two or three people who are sitting at a table, and there's like different levels of, do you want to sit alone? Do you want to like sit really, really comfortably next to somebody where you're like touching each other? Do you want to sit somewhere that's close to somebody and you could like make that offhand, like, pretty nice weather today, and all of a sudden like start the conversation? What level of when you're trying to meet somebody do you want to go for? Do you want to talk to a bartender? Do you want to like buy a drink for somebody who seems to have a low ale? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking talk to the bartender, see if they know something. Think like going up to them and just cash ask them like, if they know if there's anyone looking for any temporary work. Well, that's wrong to say, right? Looking for temporary workers.
So yeah, you can walk up to the close bartender, seems to be a younger female, maybe like mid-20s or like early 30s. The far bartender seems to be an older male, maybe like late 30s or early 40s. Both of them seem to be humans. Do you approach the girl? Would you like the woman? Do you approach the man?
Which one was closest?
The woman would be closest.
Okay, then I'm going to the woman.
Gotcha. So when you approach her, she kind of like looks up and she's like already kind of filling a drink when you kind of walk up to the bar, and you'll see as she kind of like pauses for a moment. Are you just here looking for work, or were you coming to drink as well?
Um, I could go for a nail.
So she kind of like pauses for a moment with the ale that she was filling, and she'll like turn the tap a little bit again to start flowing more ale into that cup. Setting the cup down on top of you, she takes like a little flat piece of wood and like scrapes the head off of the beer, so it's got a very even head across the top. Um, and when you go to take a sip, this is like a rich kind of brown ale, a very nutty kind of flavor. And she sets one up, kind of looking towards Wesley, who kind of nods to her, and looking towards the two of you, she'll say, "Well, it would normally be 2 copper there for those if the two of you are looking for work. We have are you rather capable folk? You seem big enough. Can you hold your own?" I'm sorry. We've got dangerous work. I need somebody to go to the Warrens. Could you? I'm sorry. Maybe it's a lot to ask. Uh, are you? I don't know when I will need another worker for something a little bit more traditional and safe. But a friend of mine has ordered a keg some time ago, and I can't find anybody who's willing to go to the Warrens. It's a little bit more dangerous, and you might have to actually defend both our keg as well as yourselves. But it pays well. It does. I can pay you. We could potentially do as much as 8 silver for. It's just about 2 hours of work.
About 8 silvers and a round of drink when we come back.
I I believe that will be no problem at all. If you give me a few more minutes, I believe the midday rush should be kind of ending pretty shortly here. And I'll be able to actually show you where the keg is. Uh, two of you look salty enough. Are you hungry? We've got a bit of a stew.
It would be lovely.
Excellent. And she'll kind of reach across the bar, like wiping off her hand, with like kind of the bar rag. She's like like kind of always have like a bar rag in her left hand or maybe over her shoulder. She kind of like pulls it off of her shoulder, wipes her hand a little bit, reaches across the bar, and she'll say to you, my name's Erling. I'll certainly be able to get that keg and everything set up. What are your names?
I will not.
Do you
Oh, sorry.
basically do you tell her your name?
Yeah, I wouldn't really keep that in. Just stretch out my hand for a shake and yeah. Name's Malshin.
Don't actually know quite enough about the physiology of a Triton. When they shake hands with you, do you have weird hands?
And from my read, I think they're more like they should have normal hands. I think they gotta
Well,
shake
I'm
that.
trying to think, are they webbed?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Because
thinking too. I gotta shake that.
because I've seen a few of them. You've got like fins. They look real, like normal enough. It might be a little bit. You might even have gloves on. We'll say you've got gloves on. Wesley did try to kind of warn you, like, let's start off here at least being a little bit more secretive. So, do you think you would remove the glove that basically hides your blue skin?
Well, yeah, thinking being up front with what I am. So, and they do have webbed hands at least. So,
Yeah, I see one with webbing. Yeah. So I think you'll see. Actually, roll how she reacts. She kind of like has like a start real quick as she sees your skin, and like you can see, I don't know, I know humans have like a little bit of the skin like almost passing between their like thumb and forefinger to kind of make a little bit of a webbing, but you can see like just with how your hands extended, there's a little bit more, and she's kind of like looking at it with a little start before she kind of catches herself, and she's uh, oh, pleasure to meet you, Malshin. And Wesley, pleasure to meet you both. Um, let me go grab those stews, and I'll be back in just a few.
oh, and sorry, Jessica. What was her name again? Yes, so I got it.
Erling, Earling.
Thank you.
So she takes a few moments, grabs uh just a little bit of the stew for you. Basically she brings out what is more or less a broth. You can see that there are little chunks of meat, little chunks of vegetables in there. Um, Probably more seaweed than about anything, and probably like a little bit of bone to get like the actual marrow out of there. Um, but everything's just kind of like chopped up. The actual bones are in large enough pieces where it's not like you're gonna accidentally eat a bit of bone, but it's in there to like get the flavor from. And then if you wanted suck out the actual marrow from the bone, that's probably one of the delicacies of this otherwise very cheap meal. But with that, basically each of them has like a really large piece of bread that's probably about the size of the bowl itself. That she kind of brings out. She'll set those down. um, for what it's worth, it's probably a really good meal for somebody who's fresh off the sea. But at the same time, it's still one of those things. It's still a commoner's meal where it's primarily a very flavorful broth to dip your bread in. But she'll serve that to you. She takes care of more of her bar guests. Maybe like an hour or so goes by before things start to calm down, and you can see as after a little bit of a break comes through, she'll grab your attention again. She'll continue to check in on you guys. Do you think you would drink more than one ale as you kind of sit back for an hour?
Yeah, I mean, if I could get my hands on one more, I would probably take it.
Gotcha. Let me have a constitution saving throw from you, please.
Let's see. That's +2. So that's a 13.
Gotcha. So yeah, the two of you end up having these other ales. As everything gets set, she doesn't take any payment from you. She will eventually grab your attention to bring the two of you off to kind of like a back room that's just like beside the actual bars or beside the actual bar. Just the way I described it doesn't really. Let's say like one side of the building is kind of noticeably narrower than like the footprint on the actual street. Perhaps like beside her bar, you can see kind of like a makeshift wall was set up to almost cut off like a little bit of like employee area. And she'll basically bring you back into one of these areas. And there's just one of these larger kegs that some of the bigger tables are sat on. It's probably about 4.5 feet tall when it's laid down on its side, and it's probably about 5 feet um, from side to side. Oh, maybe that's too tall. Let's say let's say it's about as tall as it is wide. So it's about 4 by 4. The very, very big barrel of ale. And she's basically going to give the two of you a location in the Warrens and the name, son of a bitch. Your contact in the Warrens is. I named her after the person who was supposed to be your contact because I looked up real quick for the name. She's going to send you to um, this person whose name is Kalimtas. And she will tell you that he is at the. Let's call it the Crooked Skinner.
Well, that's a charming name.
If you look for the Crooked Skinner within the Warrens, it shouldn't be terribly difficult to find. It's one of the few larger drinking locations in that part of the city. My friend Kalimtas is the patron there. And she'll say his full name is Kalimtas Erling, and then she kind of looks at you. No relations. Uh, but he's there, and he has part of the payment for you. Uh, the rest will be for us. But you'll be bringing back 2 gold with you. We need you to return here, or we'll have to send a raven for you. Roll a history check for me, please.
17.
This is one of those things. For what it's worth, you've heard enough about maybe Wesley talking about the city that when she says we'll send a raven after you, the Ravens are one of the criminal organizations of this place. And you can basically hear in a moment that this tavern isn't necessarily like her tavern or the old man on the other bar's tavern. This is a Raven tavern. With a 7, we'll say you understand the Ravens are the Kill
Oh,
Raven.
17.
Wait, what's that?
Not a 7, a 17.
Oh, my bad. I meant to say 17. I didn't think I said it, or I didn't think I said 7. May have cut off. I may have just been speaking too quick. But with that role, though, my point was is not only do you recognize that the Raven is a reference to a criminal organization, but the name of that organization is the Kill Raven Crime League. So you have an understanding by accepting this job, you have at least a dealings now with somebody who is a little bit more maybe nefarious. Um, could be her, could simply be what it costs them to survive is that they have to deal with these places. But basically, she's warning you like, if you don't come back with our coin, somebody's going to find you, and you won't like that solution.
Oh, duly noted.
When you return with his payment of 2 gold, I'll be able to give you your 8, and we'll be very thankful to have made your acquaintance. Please make sure to keep yourself safe, and if you're gonna lose the keg, it may be best for you to lose your life at the same time.
Don't worry, we won't lose the keg.
So sending you two off. She will basically like open one of those far doors. You see the old man kind of like paying attention. Maybe he like grabs her attention a little bit to see what's up. And you see she's kind of excited and she's like, I found 2 people to take the keg to the Warrens. Everything's gonna be okay. And you see is like a little bit of worry kind of passes over the old man's face, and you basically can start to roll the keg out. Um, this will be on the inner street, so you'll be on the Fisherman Street there. She'll tell you that you can either immediately turn left on Bay Street, and follow that, or you can go up to the north and basically take the wharf road all the way out.
Yeah, we'll think we'll follow the Bay Street road and go up that way.
Gotcha. So you can see some of these places here are like old and collapsed. There's places where there's like burnt out buildings. None of the buildings you're going to see in this place look remotely new. And you can kind of see from a lot of their foundations, that a lot of these different buildings are basically kind of sinking into the earth here. And it's kind of like just a weird setup to recognize, like, there's no new growth in this little area. This is one of those places where there's buildings on top of buildings, very similar to what you'll see in the actual Warrens, where more or less every inch is kind of used, other than the sparse roads that are here. And these roads in particular are very narrow. There's little room other than, say, for probably about 2 to 3 people abreast. Most wagons can kind of fit into this area, but like a 2 horse wagon is going to be too wide. But like most farmers' wagons kind of fit into this. So you can kind of see, like, this is a very valuable real estate in this location. But kind of walking along, you all will pass by one area that seems to be a bit of a shipyard that's marked as kind of the 233, where you see like a bunch of boats that have basically been like pulled up almost on dry dock, but they're like basically stripping and like taking anything of value from one boat, maybe from like say 3 boats to make 1 boat kind of thing. That place is kind of like a salvage almost. You can kind of see walking across that on Bay Street. You'll come by an area that seems to be a hostel of sorts. Um, and you can see it's got like almost like a sleeping, like for its crest, kind of like a sleeping man with like the tri-pointed like captain's hat, like resting over his head, but it's just kind of like a caricature of this like sleeping sailor. And then moving along a little bit further, you see another place that's kind of got that lively, like, raucous kind of going on inside. And that one kind of has just like the symbol of a hammer and a nail for its crest. But that's like the bar that you come across. You'll then come to the actual guardhouse. This time of day probably has a couple of guards outside. Most of them are not in full uniform, but are still relatively recognizable as guards. But the crest itself is still visible. Oh yeah, I never actually showed you the crest for Ptolus. Um, but you can basically see enough that like that's the guardhouse, and that will start to incline up the actual hill, and like the first switchback you do gets you back on the wharf's road. But you've probably already climbed almost above kind of like at least the coastal buildings by the time you get to that north end of Bay Street. Uh, Let me have you make a strength check here. You can actually use athletics if you have athletics as well.
I do have athletics, so that's a +3. Yeah, +3. So that's 20 total.
Yeah, so this initial part of kind of pushing things up is a pretty easy amount of time. You feel like the two of you are basically just walking, rolling this massive barrel. You kind of come to recognize that there's certain levels of, if you want to pause, you almost want to spin so the barrel's like perpendicular to the actual road. Try to give yourselves a little bit of rest here and there like that. But overall, warm day. The sea breeze is nice. Still have the smell of ocean. This is still a pretty familiar like level of hard work for two seamen to kind of like be pushing this barrel along. There's plenty of times where there's like traffic of actual other people who are going by, and the barrel does a lot to take up the street. So a lot of those times are where, like, if you're strategic about your rests, you can take a rest while you're like letting people go by instead of necessarily like making other people move out of your way and then taking a rest when people are not near you. So there's a certain level of like, if you want to be nicer to everybody around, you might take a few more rests, but it takes about the same amount of time instead of like wearing yourself out. But you guys make like this first little maybe like 30-40 feet of incline along Bay Street. It's much easier to do before you get to the first of the switchbacks and you start to head up the slightly steeper inclines, still making good progress. It probably takes you, I believe it's about an hour or so to travel up the actual switchbacks and leave the dock district behind. But let me have one more athletics from you here.
That's a 15.
Yeah, so by the time you get to the top of everything, the last probably third of the actual route was probably a solid 60% of the effort. It gets much steeper at the end. You can certainly see that it would have been really, really easy to like kill yourself on this. But you guys are no strangers to hard work. You're able to get the actual keg to the top of the city or to the top of the coast here. I did not get this next map set up. Give me one moment here. I don't know what part of the city that is that I'm looking for. Is that the guild? It's not the gilded district. I'm confused. So I know the temple district ends about this corner. The North Market ends about that corner. The Warrens is down here. The docks and there.
Is it part of Midtown?
Yeah, that's the next one I'm going for. I didn't think Midtown crossed the river, though, is what I was thinking. I thought Midtown was just the south side of it. Bam, yeah, it is. It's into Midtown. So you will basically come to the top of the cliff. Oh man, those cliffs have a really sweet name. I need to look that up for you. The Cliffs of Lost Wishes. So you all make it to the top of the Cliffs of Lost Wishes. Basically, I probably shouldn't have cut it off how I did, but basically where it says 219 on the east side of this map, that's kind of the crossroads where the road comes up from the dock district. So from there, you guys basically will head down Salt Street. This is one of those things. You're inside of the city proper here. This is one of those things where from the dock district, you can probably see a little bit of the spire, but it's not like all encompassing. The cliffs themselves are such a sheer cliff that a lot of the city is just simply cut off from you, where it feels like this is a city unto itself, and you're just on the edge of the ocean. Once you make it up the cliffs of Lost Wishes, you're looking up this slow incline of the street where each level of buildings are just a little bit higher than the next. But from that crossroads, while there's not like a single alleyway that leads towards like the wealthier districts, everything kind of inclines up before there's just this huge mountain that leads into this incredibly unnatural straight pinnacle of black stone up into the air. And this is one of those things where, with foreknowledge of Ptolus, you can hear about and think you're prepared to see. But once you actually look up and see it, it's kind of like hearing about like the size of a bear and how deadly a bear is, and then seeing claw marks on a tree for the first time, where you're like, all right, bears are huge. Everybody always tells you a bear can kill you in one swipe of its claws. And then you see this tree that's like the size of your torso, and it looks like the bear just opens it like it's butter. And you're just like, holy shit, that's actually real. There's kind of that sensation of seeing the actual spire for the first time. And I believe Ptolus itself is basically called uh, the city by the spire. Yeah, it's Ptolus, the city by the spire. Like this city's name has basically been taken over by the very presence of this black monolithic stone. Heading through this district itself, this area is going to lose some of the saltiness of the sea. You'll lose a little bit of the sounds of the actual waters below you, but it's all still vaguely there. Still have a little bit and the occasional breeze coming off from the sea. Most of the winds are still kind of passing east to west here, but you also do start to gain some of the less wonderful smells of a city. This city does have like a solid sewer system underneath the city itself, so it's not necessarily refuse and like garbage here, but the hustle and bustle of city life, body odors, ethnic foods. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of flavor in the air to be kind of crossing your nostrils. And it would be very much different than spending time on sea where you have like the occasional whiff of somebody's food, but there's a lot of that salty smell of the ocean. Um, but kind of coming up to this point, you see a lot of these beautiful, like stucco buildings, a lot of stonework, a lot of very old buildings, some newer. A lot of them are very close and kind of pushed in on each other. Some of these buildings, most of these buildings, you can see have signs of being kind of a shop below and a apartment above. I think of it as very like Romanesque, in where there's almost always some sort of stall to sell your wares, potentially multiple stalls for people to sell their things, and then up above there's room for people to live um, in a way that maximizes basically being both a renter as well as being like a craftsman itself. You all will head down Salt Street, eventually crossing over a larger river, the King's River. I think at that point the river is probably about 50 or 60 feet wide. Let me see with the full Ptolus map if it's got a scale for it. Let's see, 1,200 feet is 6 of those. So it's 200 feet. Yeah, probably about 50, 60 feet. What is that? I feel like that is probably like 30 or 40 meters wide when you guys cross the bridge. You're probably then about 100 or so, no, probably about 200 or 300 meters away from the waterfall. But crossing the bridge would actually give you a really beautiful view down to the east of you towards the water, where this freshwater river is falling off into the actual ocean below.
Very nice place.
Um, Heading further and further south along the Salt District, crossing that river, you'll start to gain some of the sense of the more industrial districts. You start to see there's plenty of smoke rising from different places here. There's still a lot of like wood burning cooking and like almost dung burning like cooking as well. So very smoky products in a lot of these places, but as well the south district of the guild district is almost like its own just cloud of black smoke kind of rising up. Some very strong, kind of industrial sort of smells coming from that area. You start to walk into like the sounds of hammer falls, and you can see that there's a certain amount of kind of gray area in this before you basically come like really, really close to just very industrialized, very loud, not necessarily friendly place to be. A lot more dirty people who are coming out of work like covered in charcoal. But you can basically see like you're kind of walking from Midtown is really like the pinnacle of middle class. Like it's a much nicer area to places where not only are people working for their lives, but they're also working very tough and difficult lives. The Guildsman District is a weird blend of the big guilds are very wealthy. The lower guilds are struggling. But any given like low level initiate might be working a really, really tough job, kind of like a coal worker or something like that. Like a blacksmith has a really, really difficult job. Doesn't mean they're not also wealthy. But the guilds district is kind of like that to a T, where somebody can be really, really wealthy, but it doesn't mean they don't work and sweat for every ounce of that. Let me have you roll a perception check.
Perception. Let's see. Yeah. So 14.
And let me have you roll a do an initiative.
That's an 18.
So while you're kind of rolling the keg along and making your way down Salt Street. And you're kind of like, Salt Street is going to turn. Oh, yeah, you really don't even get to the Guilds District. So Salt Street is going to turn into the Warrens pretty quickly here. But while you're kind of like wheeling yourselves over the Kings River, making your way out of Midtown and towards the Warrens, you're going to notice for a moment that you feel, you've occasionally kind of bumped into somebody, but this feels like a little bit more. Somebody just bumped into you and, like, basically you understand somebody just bumped into and stole one of your purses. Um, you spin around to like react to this touch of somebody bumped into right where I hold my money. That's pretty fishy. And you see this person who's probably about 4 or so feet tall, cloak like pulled up over their head, and they're already running back away from you up to the north. And you can kind of see as they start to run and the cloak starts to pick up behind them that the hood kind of falls over, and you see this like kind of dirty blonde long hair about like maybe a little bit deeper than shoulder length. This person's kind of running away from you. Could be a child, could be one of the smaller races. What thoughts do you have as you're pretty sure you just got pickpocketed?
Well, first I'm gonna tell Wesley to stay by the barrel, and I'm gonna rush after whoever pickpocketed me. It's one with the here. See if I can catch up.
Gotcha. So you're looking for Wesley to stay with the keg, and you're gonna go after this person. You're following them based on seeing where they are. You still have an eye on them. Are you? What what would you like to do to catch them? Like, elaborate in what your plan is to get back at this person.
Well, basically run at them and see if I can't just like pick up a rock at the same time and like throw it at them. See if I can like hit them, make them stumble a bit or whatever. If that's possible. Where would you throw it to make someone like throw it pretty hard? Like throw it at the legs maybe? Make them stumble a step?
Gotcha. Let me have you make a dexterity check. You can apply your. Yeah, let's go for dexterity.
Alright, that's 21. 21.
So, like, throwing a rock out towards them, trying to, like, either hit them in, like, the back of the knee or try to, like, get their feet to kind of pull up a little bit. They seem to stumble a little bit, almost like falling forward before, like, a quick hand down to the ground, almost like dropping to all fours. You see as they kind of catch themselves. You might have gained a little bit of space on them, but they seem to have taken that in stride. You're probably still about the same 20 or so feet behind them.
That's a quick little bugger. Okay. Yeah.
You're going to hear this person kind of yelling out, "Please stop! This person's trying to hurt me! Everyone, I can't believe I'm being attacked in the dead of night!" My bad. Head of night just came so naturally. I can't believe I'm being attacked at high sun.
After shutting out that, can I also shut out just like stop that pickpocket?
Let me have you do a persuasion here.
Oh yeah, perfect. Let's see. Oh, a nat 20, so that's a 19.
So after this kind of like yell comes up, you see a lot of the people kind of like almost separate from this area. It seems a lot more like nobody wants to actually become a part of this. But there is going to be just kind of a moment where somebody just kind of throws out a larger arm and basically is going to like pick up this person you're chasing as they kind of like spin around a little bit. You're gonna hear, now, child, whatever is the problem? And you'll see as like the little one's like, that one there, he's trying to steal my purse. Uh, and says something like along like a sap story kind of things like, my mother gave me these coins so I could go get some bread for us. We're starving. Do you know how many coins were on your like most accessible purse?
That would be, yeah, like either the silver cup or probably the copper. So 42 copper.
So you see this individual kind of like looking towards you and kind of raising like their left hand for you to calm. And what are you said stop the pickpocket, right?
Yeah.
And your story. What is your No, what's the wrong question? How much were you carrying? So, assuming you vaguely knew about 40 coins.
Yeah. Like basically, it's gonna check to make sure as well that which one actually got taking us to make sure, and then seeing like the copper gone like around 40 coins.
Child, give me your purse that your mother sent you out for food. I believe we'll see to the bottom of this quite quickly. This person's gonna take a few moments to kind of like open up this bag of coins. You see, as they've kind of got their palm open with like the bag kind of above. They're not really counting it, but they kind of shake it for a moment before they like pull the drawstrings again on it. And you can see as they kind of look to you, look to the kid with a little bit more stern of a look, like, the city guard do not look kindly on pickpockets. We must be a town of order. You, child, would not lie about going out for bread. It seems a bit odd that you might need bread with so many coins. And it's just gonna kind of like reach the bag of coins back out to you. Admonish the child a little bit more. You can see this is probably like an 8 to 10-year old. They're certainly like dirty, a little bit more kind of like torn about. Um, and you'll see as this guard kind of like looking between the two of you, I would have to punish you were I still on duty. And kind of handing the bag back off to you. This isn't going to become a problem where I need to take either of you to the actual constables.
And Marsh will just pipe out that, nah, no, no problem. I have my coin back in, so no harm, no foul.
Kind of like looking to the child, you can see like they're not really like piping up to say anything. You can kind of see that they recognize like their danger is kind of like high and present. And at this point, basically, the guard will kind of send you on your way. Seems to still have the child, and taking a moment, you see as he, like, basically, if you allow them to walk away, probably one of the last things that you'll hear is kind of this idea like, this guard is about to give the kid some food, but you can basically tell, like, this guard doesn't really believe this kid is out to buy food for his family. This is probably a homeless child whose job, life, is pickpocketing.
Yeah, I think before I would go, and before they got too far away, I would just kneel down to the child and say, ah, really good work with the pickpocket. I mean, I barely felt it, but you really need to choose your marks better if you want to keep doing that. And I'll sneakily try to give like at least 5 coppers to the child. 'Cause, I mean, I'm kind of impressed with the pickpocket.
So the guard will probably look at you in response. It's best not to encourage them, but I also understand your soft spot. And then the kid will just kind of like, with a little bit of a smirk to you and like a little bit of a wink, kind of like, I'm kind of sticking to the idea. The guard's still gonna kind of like walk this kid off, and basically, you'll see like basically pop into like a little booth, where somebody can grab a bit of bite to eat. Um, it's basically just like a like street side vendor kind of thing. He'll get the kid like a little bit of bread, maybe with like some gravy or something kind of thing. Very simple street food. The guard's gonna buy the kid some food. Um, and you can kind of tell the guard's gonna put at least a little bit of an effort into trying to steer this kid away from crime. Um, you might hear at least a little bit. Actually, let me get a perception check from you again.
That's a 26.
Yeah, so you hear basically as the guards kind of taking this kid away, he's not, it's enough to recognize like this guard isn't just simply going to let the kid away. The guard basically drops again that very same keyword of speaking about the ravens. And you can kind of see like a certain level of this guard is trying to figure out if this is actually a professional thief who is also a child, or whether this is a child who is also a thief. So there's a certain amount of you kind of pick up that keyword where the guard seems to be speaking. Um, One of my favorite things about this, I don't know, do you like magic? Do you ever watch something like damn, now I can't think of their name. There's two magicians who are famous for being Vegas showmen, and they like show how magic is done without always showing all of it, kind of thing. Penn and Teller. Do you ever watch Penn and Teller?
I have watched some of them.
So one of my favorite things that they do is Penn and Teller they have this show called Fool Us, where they'll talk to a magician, and for me at least, it's easy enough to know the key words that to the magician tell them whether Penn and Teller like get what they're doing. And it's a very trusting kind of thing where they're like blah 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 keyword blah 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 blah, did we figure out what you did? And then the magician says like yes or no, and that's usually enough for them to decide like you get $10,000 or not, kind of thing. um but it's kind of that level of a conversation. You can kind of see this guard is trying, or you can hear rather, this guard is trying to like get a response from saying these words. Raven would be the big one that you pick up, that you can kind of pick up that that's where the conversation's going. But you see and hear this as the guard kind of sits down, orders a little bit of food. But basically, you can go on your way. This guard seems to be trying to figure out what the kid is. And you find Wesley kind of like just hanging out on the side of the road, kind of leaned over on this barrel. And yeah, he'll probably ask something pretty simple. Did you get what you needed?
Yeah, I'll like toss the pouch like up and down a bit. Yeah, I got the coin back, so I have what I need.
So he like smirks a little bit in response, recognizing now what had happened, that your purse basically got taken there. And he'll like take a little response. Perhaps we should make sure to be a bit more careful. If the Warrens are as dangerous as they sound, we won't have anyone to protect our purses here. And you can kind of see from across the bridge, now that you've crossed the King's River, the Warrens is this south area of you. You're on the old sea road, and the Warrens is just this kind of district here. This is one of those things. Like I've been to Haiti, I've been to some third and fourth world countries, or fifth world, where saying a building is a very, very loose concept. This is one of those places where it's a pretty horrific sight for a lot of people to see and recognize what life must be like. But the Warrens is one of those places where it's kind of a trash heap of people building on top of buildings. If you find a little bit of material, you might start to build something, and simply having a little bit of stone kind of set out is a good way to say, this is now my property. See, that's my brick. And if you have a little bit of extra money, one day you might buy a second brick, and you slowly kind of build things. This is one of those places where everything is kind of built up and on top of each other. A lot of places are constantly in danger of collapsing. This is one of the places where there is technically a sewer beneath it, but a lot of things are not necessarily hooked up to said sewer system. So when I said Ptolus doesn't necessarily smell like awful things, the Warrens is one of the exceptions to that rule. This is definitely one of the places that when the breeze is coming off of the ocean, there's no longer any saltiness to it. It smells like human refuse. It's a pretty terrible kind of place to go. Um, and we'll say in general, you guys know. Um, Give me one second here. Let's say Erling pointed you all towards, if you head into the Wardens from the second street, that, maybe she'll even have said, the second proper street to have entered into the city, or into that district. So she'll basically tell you this second one from the north. You'll follow that until you can take your second left. No, I said that wrong. Let's call it the second right. So the second right, you'll find you have this as your first right, this as your second right, and then she'll basically say, it will be the first building. It will be the building on the corner of your first left. Um, so she'll basically tell you is that building there to find, what was it called? The Crooked Skinner.
Yep, the very charming name.
And then again, you were asked to search for Kalimtas. Um, so let's have you do a intelligence check here.
That's a 10.
So as the two of you are kind of pushing this barrel through these streets, a lot of times it's actually like bumping into both sides of the street. You almost have to kind of like turn it a little bit catty corner, push it up on a side, and you like kind of rotate it over, and then you can kind of roll it again. But it's one of those things to remember, like this place more than anywhere else is not designed. This has just simply been where people create their homes. There's people who are passed out on the side of the street. Sometimes you roll around them. Sometimes you can ask them to stand up and they move for you. Sometimes you ask them to stand up and you get like a threat in return and you almost just kind of roll, not like over them, crushing them, because the barrel is, barrel shaped where it kind of picks up at the end a little bit. But it's definitely one of those things where you're already kind of like in this very unwelcoming place. And after a few minutes of kind of like pushing through this town or this little part of the city, you guys are in what feels like a maze. It might feel a little bit claustrophobic to kind of like look up and just see all of these little shanty homes all around you. And kind of looking between the two of you, Wesley's just going to look to you and you're like, I didn't see the second right. Did we miss it? Are we? I think we need to ask someone.
Yeah, I'll look around, just take a look, see if there's anyone who we could ask. Seems like they're awake or conscious.
Roll a perception here.
That's 13.
So there's people walking here and there to get around you, and around this area. So you just kind of like grab the first person who looks maybe a little bit more presentable than the next. And what do you say to this person who seems to be plenty dirty? Maybe not the most savory of characters, but they seem nicer than the other people that you see at first hand.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go. Sorry, we're looking for the Crooked Skinner. We have a and giving a nod to the barrel, a delivery for Calyptus Erling. You might be so nice to guide us. There could be some coin in for it.
How much coin? A good guide. Cost a good coin? A bad guide.
I think a good guide for a silver would be all right.
You have silver. I'll take the coin and I'll show you where the crooked Skinner is.
Uh, uh, you get the silver when the job is done. In the meantime, and just to show us a
Very
good.
well.
All right. Take out 5 coppers.
You said silver.
Oh, you can exchange it for a silver when we're done. That's half for now.
I want half the silver. Basically making you like take out a blade and cut a silver in half.
Yeah, you just like give a sigh, but all right. Take the coppers back. Take out a silver coin. Try to
Okay.
chop it in half.
No, that's perfectly legit. That's one of the things that I like about old school things is like effectively for keeping track, mark down that you gave away 5 copper here. But as far as he's concerned, he wants to see this oh man, I can't remember what the silvers are called here. I feel like the silvers have a picture of the Temple of Lothian. So I think they're called like Lothians or something like that. But he basically wants to see a silver coin cut in half, and that half silver is what he's going to start with here. Um, so yeah, as far as well, actually realistically, it's about to be the full silver you can write off because he'll take you there for the half up front, the half when you arrive. Um, you can see as he basically walks you around. You guys will say maybe have kind of like gotten around this area. So he kind of backs you up and you can kind of see like an area where like the alley that you missed was basically a pretty freshly like crumbled house. So while it looks like there's a house there, the house like fell down like basically it was like somebody built their house across like two by fours, and one of those two by fours collapsed. And instead of the house like falling and just disintegrating, it just kind of fell from above into this bit of an alley. And you guys are basically about to walk through this quote unquote house with the barrel. And you'll basically have him kind of like just moving you through this. Uh, God. Yeah. You'll have somebody who's kind of like upset in there, but when they see that you're actually like armed, they kind of calm down pretty quickly here. One thing to keep in mind, a lot of people in the Warrens don't necessarily have weapons, certainly not swords. These are the type of people who you're not in danger because of one person. You're in danger because there's probably like 15,000 people in this tiny, tiny little area. That if people came out to attack you, there's going to be a lot of people. But he'll basically take you there, and you can basically get taken into the Crooked Skinner. Uh, the building is, again, more or less an amalgamation of reclaimed things. There's definitely signs of some of these are like um, one side of the building is held up by what looks to be a mast from an old ship. This other like wall is built up of like 4 different kinds of wood. Some of them were painted previously. Some of them seem entirely unprotected, like they're already rotted away. Inside the building itself, you see a lot of like animal furs kind of adorned all around the building. Um, but basically, you're gonna walk into a very musky kind of bar and tavern. Probably has about 10 or 15 people in it. Probably could comfortably fit about 20 or so people. But by the smell of it, it probably has about 100 people inside of this building at any given like night. But you can get inside when you get close to it. Um, this person's gonna kind of like raise their hand to take the other silver, and you're still like in the street, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, where's the crooked Skinner? And he's just gonna point to that building, basically, like, this is it, you're here. And from what you can tell, there's nothing about this building that says Crooked Skinner until you basically walk inside. You can step back out if you'd like to do it like that. Once you see that this place is called the Skinner because it's got a bunch of actual animals, like tanned leather kind of thing. Um, Pay him his other half of the silver.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take out the other half. And, oh, you certainly were a good guide. So here you have it.
When you go to hand him that coin, you're going to see as 2 people kind of are going to rush towards you. And between the 2 of you, they are going to. What's your AC?
16.
So one's going to jump for you, trying to tackle you, and is going to miss. The other one is going to tackle the person who was your guide. What kind of thoughts do you have when this happens?
Well, I think I would pull out at least one of the short sword and just basically like threaten him, just back off.
Gotcha. Right now, you're just going for an intimidation.
Yep,
You can go ahead, roll me an intimidation.
that's a 2.
Gotcha. At this, let me get a initiative from you, please.
It's a 23.
This track is called Medieval Folk Music, Medieval Minstrels, Beautiful, Relaxing Instrumental.
Okay. Yeah, very.
What the fuck? That like child's rhyme from the previous track always drives me mad, but I don't think I've ever gotten to this because that other track drives me so mad. All right, so as you kind of like go to threaten this person who's tackled you, you're going to see as one of them is biting at the hand of the guy with the silvers, with those 2 silver pieces right now. And then the other one is going to um, kind of pulling just like a rusty piece of metal, is basically going to slash at you with what is effectively a dagger. Um, 14, that should hit you with an 18 to hit. He's going to deal, and I can't even see. It's not clearing. Give me 1 second. Uh, what the fuck? Okay, that was still rolling. He's going to stab you with this like rusty, just little spike in his hand, dealing 5 damage to you. And when you actually see him stabbing into you, you can see that while this person looks vaguely humanoid, they have a very rodent-like face. This person looks like they've got a little bit elongated face, where their nose is almost at the furthest point of it, and their like kind of pink mouth and nose like start to turn into this grayish hair before you kind of see these almost like bloodshot red eyes a little bit set back further under the hood. But much of what you see is kind of this like gray hairy snout that's almost like kind of coming out from this hood. This person isn't necessarily as short as they would look. They're kind of hunched over their legs a little bit. But you've got one stabbing into you. You've got another one who's biting into the man who you just paid to take you to the Crooked Skinner. What would you like to do here? The intimidation seems not to have worked. Their attack continues.
Yeah, then I'm gonna pull out my other short sword as well and swing at the one who just stabbed me.
Gotcha. First strike on him.
21.
Excellent. Solid hit. Let's see that damage.
Let's see, that's a 4? Because that's a 1 plus 3.
Gotcha. Um, and that's a short sword attack. So your bonus action, I believe this is still with your proficiency, so a normal roll. And then the actual attack itself is just the roll for damage.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Uh,
9.
9 is under its armor. So first attack, you kind of get a good. Short swords are piercing. So like first attack, you get a solid strike like into its kind of chest, maybe its abdominal, as it's kind of like reaching up to like dagger into your like arms here. The second strike, it's able to kind of manipulate itself out of the way, and you just kind of like slide just like right past some of its actual like cloak, and you can see maybe the way its cloak's draping across it, its body is a little bit narrower than its silhouette kind of gives way to. um let's say for the sake of things that Wesley is going to make an attack here, perhaps with a little bit more. Let's just give him like a long sword or something like that. Make a just roll a d20.
That's a 5.
Gotcha. So swiping across the, which one do you think Wesley would go for? Do you think protecting you?
Yeah, probably.
Gotcha. So swiping up at the one who's like lunging at you with this dagger, Wesley kind of misses it as it's dodging your second sword. It accidentally dodges his attack. The guy who's being bit kind of. What is it doing? Why is it like is changing, but I'm not clicking to roll? Do you see my number change? It's now solidified at 20.
Yeah, now I see it.
I feel like Alt. Me holding it. 19, 1, 5. Why is it doing that? That is so fucking weird. If I let go, still change for a moment after I let go. Now it's a 15. I don't get that. Um, my first roll, though, from the guy, I feel like was too low for it to hit as he's being bit by the other of these. And I think that's back around to them then. That is absurd. What is wrong? I think alt definitely messes with the number on Owlbear. So the first of them attacking into the guy on the ground is going to hit with a 23. Yeah. If I have something about Brave and my computer is messing with this. Because if I have the secure Brave shields on, it doesn't clear the numbers. If I turn them off, the numbers move. Very weird. So it's going to bite into him again. When it bites into him, it's going to do 5 damage. I think 5 is close to what most commoners have. This guy's going to start to expire pretty soon here as this creature is biting into him. And it is going to basically grabbing these coppers, start to run away. The other one that is attacking with you is going to nimbleness. Yeah, I think it's going to disengage and run. So these two creatures are basically both of them are running from you guys right now. Probably about 25, 30 feet away from you. These two creatures are running back into an alley between some of these buildings, kind of southwest of you. What sort of thoughts do you all have? They basically swarmed out of nowhere, took this silver that was being exchanged, bit and stabbed the two of you who are exchanging the money. What is Malshin thinking?
Can I still see them?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. Just gonna drop both my swords and pull out my longbow and shoot one of them if I can.
Gotcha. Going for the one who was already attacking you, or going for the one that's going for the one that was attacking you?
I'm thinking the other one, the one who bit the guy, because that's what who took the silver, right?
Gotcha. So make that attack.
That was so close to a 20, but it's a 2, so that's a 7.
Gotcha. So that arrow's gonna go wide, basically just kind of sinking into one of the buildings, near where those creatures are falling into these alleyways. What do you think, Wesley would be doing here? Is he kind of following suit with you, grabbing something long range to try to make an attack? Is he running after them?
Thinking I would probably more
Maybe.
stand his ground.
Gotcha. So Wesley kind of like looks around at the surroundings. He's gonna say, kind of looking to you as you're like taking the shot, almost trying to like stop you mid shot with the keg's what matters. We need to protect it. And he's gonna like start to like seeing as there's like a commotion starting to pay attention to like these swords dropping to the ground. He's already like reaching down to grab your swords. And he's just saying, Maushin the keg, this is what's important.
And that Mash just go, fuck. Alright, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Fuck.
So, when you get a chance to kind of check the guy on the ground, can I have you do a medicine check?
Oh, and that's 20.
Gotcha. So when you go to actually like check on him, it seems like these teeth that were like biting into him, you can see that there's like really large, I think incisors are your front teeth. And it's kind of almost like two or three teeth that seem to like bit in from the top and bottom. Um make a oh yeah, you're a ranger. Make a animal handling, maybe a nature check. I think a nature check's probably a little bit closer.
That's a 19.
Gotcha. So when you're starting to like see these wounds, you're staunching an actual like arterial bleed. Um, right, there's arteries in your arms. Yeah, there has to be. So wherever this creature bit into this person, you can see that it got into this man's arteries. So he's certainly close to death. You are able to staunch the wound, apply enough pressure. He might lose some mobility, kind of thing. There's probably going to be a high cost to getting attacked like this, but you basically are able to save his life with that initial medicine check. The thing that might be a little bit more astonishing to you is that while you just saw a human of sorts attack somebody, you're going to recognize that in hindsight, these are the bite marks of a rat. And this is going to kind of bring you into an understanding that there are less savory folk here that are rat folk, rat like humans. And these are just a couple of them. And it seems like they come from the shadows, and as soon as they were here, they're just as quickly gone. And you can kind of recognize for a moment here that um, perhaps Wesley's trepidation was a solid, timely understanding. You guys have the keg in tow. Your guide is alive, albeit pale, very white, very much covered in his own blood at this point, um, and potentially still in severe danger. But for what it's worth, you did save his life.
Yeah, is he conscious right now, or has he passed out from like pain or?
It would be unconscious at this point.
Yeah, I would try to prop him up and like bring him into like the crooked skinner.
Gotcha. Do you intend to leave Wesley outside with the barrel when you bring this man into the Crooked Skinner?
Yeah, for the one, just telling Wesley to just sit tight. I'll be right back and just bring him in, basically just inside for now before going back out.
When you bring him inside, just like over your shoulder, you're gonna see is there's like a little bit of attention from the people inside. When you bring somebody in on your shoulder, most of the patrons are gonna go back to their thing, but you'll see the bartender kind of looking towards you, and he's gonna yell, "This isn't a boarding house. You can't bring him in already drunk. That's my job."
Ah, Colin, well, he's not drunk yet. He just had a very bad day. Seemed to be.
We're in the Warrens.
Ah, that's true. But seems to have been a rougher day than usual, at least. And with that, I'm just gonna call back. Well, while going back, I just call. Oh, we're coming back in with a keg. Where do you want it?
So when you like bring back up that you're actually coming in with the keg, you'll see as like this person's demeanor kind of changes. You see as some of the actual people in this tavern kind of like perk up at that. You've got the ale from the docks.
Yeah, it's right outside. My companion's waiting for me to bring it in.
A great day it is then. So he'll kind of like step from behind the bar, and as he kind of like moves behind the bar to come for you guys, you'll see is like there's a little bit of a shuffle like around the room. You can kind of hear like a little bit of movement, and he's gonna like spin back around, walk behind the bar again, and he grabs this just like massive like 4x4, and you can see it's like shaved down into a handle on like one side of it, but it's otherwise relatively rectangular on most of this. But you can see where there's just massive chunks in the wood are like just impacted and kind of crushed in. Other areas where there's massive chunks kind of splintering off, some where chunks are missing. But you basically see as he like turns around, grabs this like squared off bat, and he like points it as if he's calling like a home run in a baseball game at one of the guys who moved, and you just hear him say, if you move for it, Lathias, I'm gonna crush your skull. You see as the guy kind of sits back down a little bit, perhaps getting the idea that if the bartender steps away, maybe I can get a free drink. And he kind of like walks back over to you, like throwing this large like 4x4 bat over his shoulder, and he'll kind of like peek out of the front door, and with another like big chuckle as he sees the keg, and he's like, oh, Erlen's a beauty. Oh. Kind of like unlocks a latch just over for this like second little bit of a door, that is much more just kind of like a bunch of wood that is relatively hinged, throwing it kind of open like some barn doors. He has you guys bring the keg in. There's nothing basically but just the room there is. So he basically has you roll it apart. You'll see as you move some tables, and you guys eventually get this keg back behind the makeshift bar, and he'll be pretty quick to throw a tap in it. If you guys are quick to go for a drink, uh are you patient in like asking for a drink? Do you ask for a drink? What are you thinking when you guys basically get this keg behind the bar?
I'm thinking we're still on the job, so no drinking yet.
Gotcha. So he'll kind of look to you and he'll say, excellent, it's a pleasure. I believe Erling and I are all squared away. Everything's all set. Oh, thank you, gentlemen, quite kindly.
Well, there is the matter of payment.
Oh no, we're square.
That's not what Erling told us. 2 gold.
I assure you, we paid.
Doesn't matter what you assure me. I'm going what Erling told me, and that's 2 gold, and I better come back with it.
Right you are, right you are. And he's gonna kind of like reaching down below the bar. You kind of like hear a couple of like clicks. He just kind of like kneels a little bit and hear a couple of coins. He'll kind of stand up, and he takes this little pouch, and looking around is like, enough people heard. It's probably a good idea for the two of you to make your escape sooner rather than later.
Couldn't agree more with you.
and kind of noticing like a little bit of like the arterial like blood spouts all over you all at this point. He's like, or maybe you could stay for a drink. You seem to be at least a little bit more in control of your destiny than some others.
But would that I could, but I'm still on the job, so to say. And, well, no drinking on the job.
So yeah, if you are prepared to head out, I think is yeah, you guys can kind of head back out, leaving and making your way back towards the docks. Do you intend to go back and simply pay Erling? What kind of thoughts do you have about when you do go back?
Well, I'm thinking we're going back to Erling as fast as possible to finish the job. And then there was the matter of payment from her and the ale.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you have a pretty easy route back. You're pretty familiar enough with the actual like main roads once you're out of the Warrens. Um Certain amount of understanding that it's easiest to leave by going south and heading out of the Warrens like that before going west and finding the old sea road. But as far as things go, you guys can make your exit back towards the docks. Everything progresses pretty simply. It's nice and easy. You're going downhill this way instead of pretty much going uphill the entire way to get here. You eventually have these switchbacks where you're heading back down into the actual docks, finding your way back to the actual coast. There's a certain amount of kind of like going home kind of feeling to this, getting closer to the salt, feeling the moisture in your air. Your flesh feels a little bit more at home. But you guys can go back, I believe, collect, what was it, 8 silver?
Yeah, 8 silver and a round of ale.
Yep. So she will set you up with those silvers. She'll pour you another glass of ale. You all probably took about 4 or 5 hours to do that. If you're hungry enough, she'd offer you another round of the stew. You can tell that it's a little bit more watered down this time. It's probably the same stew, simply been cooking that much longer. Add a little bit more water to liven it back up. Um, get a couple of more ales. Do you hang out and stay there beyond? Or do you think you'd eat and drink a little bit more and then head on your way?
Well, seeing that we did our first job in the city, so calls for some celebration. So a bit more drinking, a bit more eating.
Gotcha. Yeah, while you're drinking and enjoying yourselves, do you and Wesley keep to yourselves? Are you guys drinking at the bar? Do you think you're kind of socializing and moving around to talk to others? Do you kind of make it evident that you're celebrating something?
Maybe not evident that we're celebrating, but we would probably be this like socializing a bit. Nothing else, just to meet more people. Never hurts to get more connections when you're new in town.
I'm sorry about that. Let me get a D100 from you.
35.
So, among some of the things that you all kind of pick up while you're spending the evening at the Silken Sail, you might hear a few people bring up the slavers in the waters around here. That there's some folk who seem to be kind of assaulting sailors, and more or less people who can kind of be found on their own, a little bit too drunk and late in the night, as well as some of the other folk who seem to tell tales. Wait, no, I said that backwards. Those are the ones where you hear people who are like telling tales and kind of rumors of people who go missing, and like the rumors of slavers kind of operating in Ptolus Bay. One of the other kind of rumors that you pick up on is some folk who actually talk about going into the sewers themselves and trying to uh, claim some of the rat tails in order to sell, or rather, in order to collect the bounty that the commissioner of Ptolus has offered for their effectively. Ptolus has a problem with rat folk. And you guys are like, oh, shit. If we had killed those guys, their tails were worth money.
Oh, fuck. Oh, now we know.
So, while it's potential that we could kind of continue on here, I feel like this is as solid as a kind of stop as we can get to. Um, I feel like because it was kind of off the cuff, that I may have chosen those prices a little bit low. I'm kind of tempted to say, let's pretend that you guys got 40% of 20 gold instead of 2 gold, and still threaten your life over stealing it, kind of thing. Um, because I'm just trying to think how much Justin might walk away. We never actually finished his, because his was a pretty similar situation where he had a lucrative opportunity. He went for it, but he also has to pay back some of what he gained. And I don't necessarily want you to suffer because we had a different storyline. So I think it's safe to say at this point you probably have about that same 10 gold that you would have started with. Or are you at like 9 gold right now? How much coin do you have on Moushin?
Right now I have a total of 9 gold with divided in like 6 gold, 34 silver, and 38 copper.
Gotcha. I think that's actually just under 10 gold. I think you're like, what, like 8 or so copper under 10, or 8 or so silver maybe under 10 gold. Um,
Isn't like 100 copper for a gold?